Yeah, so I've got some questions here, and hopefully they'll just spark some good conversation, and we can go from there.
Absolutely. Is
I
it?
thought that we would start just by touching in on how your journey started and kind of about your background and what initially inspired you to get on this path.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've answered it in a lot of ways. What inspired like me as a health coach goes back to about 7 years ago when I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and it was debilitating. Like I wasn't able to walk without pain. Uh, it was a skin diagnostic issue with like a very sensitive part with a lot of nerves on it, and that I got injured, like the skin ripped and the fissure within it triggered like the nerves to be constantly inflamed. Uh, and so I learned about inflammation and started to really treat my body in terms of inflammation and cut out anything in my life that caused inflammation. And there's actually a famous document that says it's called 15 Ways to Love Your Liver. And like looking back, I just looked at it recently, and looking back on it, I was like hitting every single one of those, like dark leafy greens, reducing sugar, like processed sugar, reducing stress, like all these things that were causing inflammation in my body. I was researching and finding more about, and I was in a job that I didn't like, that was causing stress. So eventually got out of that, trusting in the universe that I would find something or something would guide me. And I continued to look to improve my health because I knew that what got me there was going to kill me eventually. Um, I really was pretty unhealthy. I was like around 200, 210 pounds, eating very poor, just too much, blue light stuck in an office all day. So I was pretty in a lot of pain, and I slowly kind of crawled my way out of it. It wasn't until like about 2 years after that, 2.5 years, that I could walk without pain. And I did a lot of work, even with psychedelics, actually, to turn off certain signals in my brain or to sort of move past certain blockages in my nervous system that kept me from moving forward. Uh, and I continued to like look for answers and look for guides and look for people. I was working with a trainer, um, and he taught me a lot about the body. And I started getting into fitness, and then the pandemic hit, and I was still working out and doing yoga, but like didn't feel like healthy. And there was something that I knew that it was missing. So I was like on Instagram, and I found Brian, found him, and I really like took it seriously. The whole program, I invested in a 6 month program with the intention of being like as disciplined and as thorough with it as I could, and it really allowed me to um, explore deeper parts of myself and evolve. And I had what Brian calls a meteoric rise. So I was able to take the breath and go really, really far with it, uh, learning about myself in the process, but also just like detoxing and just gaining such a better awareness of my own health through breath. Oxygen Advantage and everything that he teaches, and all the other teachers through Oxygen Advantage, what that system is teaching is uh, to improve your health through breath and to like gain that awareness and gain that strength. And so it wasn't until then that I really kind of felt a huge switch. And it wasn't even until like maybe 6 or 8 months into it that I like had some massive changes, because I was going very, very deep into it with detoxing, herbal protocols, tons of breath work. Like I'm now down to 170 pounds, but I don't feel like I'm, like sometimes you lose weight and you feel like kind of weak. I don't feel that. I feel strong. I feel full. I feel like tensegrity in my body. I feel strength. And it's not just tensegrity in the body, it's tensegrity in the breath. And that tensegral breath that I now teach um, has made me believe in this process. And it's already starting to show in all the clients that I'm working with. So I took all the knowledge that I've been building for the last 7 years and turned it into like a career and a passion. And anytime I hop on a call with somebody new and they start asking me questions, I'll just go off and talk about breath and talk about health and how health is holistic and connect it to everything, because everything is, we are a part of everything. We are a part of nature, and nature, we're included in that. And so everything is holistic when it comes to nature and when it comes to health. So I love to dive down all of these topics because there is an answer and there is more questions to be asked about a lot of things, and it provides positive feedback for people to experience better health and optimize their body and mind, optimize their mind, body, and spirit. So it's this path of mine really started from like a need to heal myself, and then it turned into a passion and a want to share those gifts. I just started accumulating so much information, and with the age of the internet now, you can become kind of the master of a lot of things pretty quickly. And it was my passion to do that, and I always felt a like a drive in like the deeper aspects of my soul to be on a path of like, I don't necessarily know if it's enlightenment, but it's like optimistic, just life. I'm very happy to be in this life and very happy to be here. And so when I hit my illness, my I got diagnosed with my autoimmune, I fell into a depression for about like 2.5 years, and it crawled my way out of it, knowing that like this wasn't who I am. This is just a part of me right now that's expressing itself, and that it's not my higher self. And so I've just been tapping into that higher self for a while now.
Yeah, something I've always appreciated about you and your work is that it's coming from a place of authenticity, of experience. And I lost what I was about to say.
Authenticity is super important, and I think it's going to be more important in the future as we move from sort of like a tribalistic society in terms of like relying on certain entities and certain groups for that feeling, or for that feeling of belonging. We're going to move more into that sense of authenticity, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that, potentially leading the charge.
So the first little, when you were talking about your journey up and through this process, you mentioned two things that I want to touch on. The first is your coach and teacher, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the first question is, what is it from Brian's practice that you now incorporate into what you provide to your clients?
That's a great question. So in human design, I am a reflector. So I didn't really understand this when I found it out, but I'm starting to understand it the more I spend time with certain people. And what I've what I've received from Brian and embodied is his coaching style. His coaching style, he has a very gentle approach to how he teaches breathwork and how he teaches the nervous system, and it really allows. It's like a tenderness and almost like a feminine aspect to it, but it's also very disciplined and rigid. So it has this balance of the masculine and feminine within it, and I think that's been very powerful to embody as a coach. And then there's the deeper nuances of the breath and how he approaches his teaching, which is something that I started to just feel into as I got deeper into his program, because I was sharing about my experience all the time, and I was spending so much time with myself, learning about myself, learning about the breath, and how that can translate to me just teaching about the breath. Is just me sharing my experience with it, which is something that's also part of that authenticity. But it's so powerful because people can learn better, learn really well in that way. They can kind of absorb something that you've experienced. And if you can explain it from a place where you've actually experienced it, as opposed to just reading it or seeing it online, somebody else can really connect with that. And I think that's really, really important for coaching in general. But yeah, like I also just mentioned the nuances of breath. And I think Brian is up there as one of the best breath coaches in the world, teaching breath and teaching and diving into the nuances. He spends hours and hours just sitting and breathing. And I've adapted a lot of those practices myself. I spend a lot of time being aware of my breath and aware of other people's. So I can even even through screens, I can detect and see how somebody's breathing, how their nervous system is going. Like there's so much that I've learned from him as a coach. Yeah.
I can remember the first time that we hopped on a call together and we did a breath assessment, and the amount of awareness that I was able to gain just within that 1 hour session with you in terms of how I was breathing was absolutely tremendous. I became aware that there was several ways where I was compensating and breathing in ways that weren't optimal. And from that moment on, I was able to make some adjustments because I had identified, some of those compensations with your help. And you were able to point things out, and already had you were already developing that eye to
Mm.
be able to see the mechanics behind how someone was breathing and the state of their nervous system just by seeing how they spoke or looked you in the eye when you were talking to them. But let's get into oxygen advantage, because this is where you and Brian both are instructors of oxygen advantage. You just pretty recently finished your certification.
Yeah. Last August, I believe. Yeah.
So let's get into oxygen advantage, and maybe you can talk to me a little bit about the basic principles and also how it compares or differentiates itself from other systems.
Yeah. Great question. So oxygen advantage and how and why it's beneficial for everybody is because it has systems and programs designed in place for you to build from a foundation. So it's understanding the foundations and the principles of breathing, and then how to build from there. So they have two pillars in oxygen advantage, and the first pillar is functional breathing. That's all about understanding the nasal passage and how to basically optimally breathe through your nose 24/7. So how to unblock your nose, how to keep your nose clear and clean, and then how to use things like mouth tape to train your autonomic nervous system to breathe that nasal breath 24/7. And then once you've overlap between Brian and what Brian teaches and Oxygen Advantage, Oxygen Advantage has the two pillars: functional breathing and then improving tolerances to carbon dioxide. So understanding the blood pH of chemistry and how to balance your blood. Brian takes things a step further, not a step further, but he has his own nuances to things, and he has his own techniques, like using the white flower oil to open up the nose, using all these other tools that we have available to us to work within our nasal passage and open up the fascia in there. So like once you understand the dysfunctional breathing patterns, once you understand where you're coming from, then you have a place to work from. Once you understand where your bolt score is, then you can build a program, or a coach can build a program for you on how to evolve. There's so many nuances to the functional breathing pillar, getting into the dysfunctional breathing patterns, getting into understanding where tension is held in the breath, where it is held in the top or the bottom, where it's held in the body itself, can just bring awareness to a lot of those things. And then going through a lot of practices can bring people into a place where they can start on the second pillar. So it's like understanding these two pillars is laying the foundation for you to evolve. And the second pillar can go very, very far. There is honestly no limit to it in the way that you can structure routines and exercises. At least that's the way I found it. There literally is no limit. And it works in a way that you can increase your anaerobic, anabolic, metabolic capacity for health and breath. You can delay your onset of breathlessness to a very, very high point. So you work through these ways and you understand how to recover through them, through these principles, and then you can build from there. And it goes deep. It goes from sitting to standing to walking to running to sprinting, and you can even do a lot with the sprinting. And this is all exhaled breath holds. So you're understanding how to cultivate and capture carbon dioxide. So this is super important and very profound, is the ability to capture and cultivate carbon dioxide. We understand in Oxygen Advantage the blood pH gas exchange, and we understand the chemistry of how to shift your blood into either alkaline or acidic, and what that means for the amount of oxygen you can uptake to your brain and to your tissues and organs. And this balance and learning this balance, kinesthetically understanding this balance, giving yourself the principles of this information really gives you like full knowledge on how to live the rest of your life through this system. When it comes to comparing this system to other systems, first we have to look at where this system is actually based out of. And there's a few pieces of information that we can share in Oxygen Advantage that tell us about the history of where it's from. So in the early 1900s, there's a famous scientist that learned the relationship between carbon dioxide and blood pH, Christian Bohr. When you reduce your breathing or hold your breath on an exhale, you shift your blood into acidic. When you hyperventilate or overbreathe, you shift your blood into alkaline. So it's understanding how to balance and how to create hypoxic effects within your blood pH in order to liberate oxygen from hemoglobin. So this increase in pressure from carbon dioxide allows hemoglobin to be liberated from oxygen and become free oxygen. And it's that free oxygen that we can uptake and use in our body that gets delivered to our brain, tissues, organs, and cells. So understanding this just basic principle, there's a famous Russian scientist, his name is Buteyko, and he developed a whole method in the 1950s to understand this balance and to understand how to reduce your breathing. The average person breathes anywhere from 12 to 18 breaths per minute. And what the reduced breathing and what the Oxygen Advantage does is it trains your autonomic nervous system to breathe less breaths per minute. And this is profound because when you breathe less breaths per minute, you increase what's called alveolar ventilation, and you're actually getting more oxygen in your body and in your cells by breathing less. So there's an equation that we use in Oxygen Advantage that proves this. So it's understanding that reducing your breathing down autonomically by shifting your blood pH and letting it balance in the middle creates this autonomic state, this parasympathetic nervous system state. So these are in the last 120 years, the two biggest moments that we know about breath. There's actually Patrick talked about in a reel recently about how he didn't say exactly which time, but in England, the streets and the society was very dirty, and they got a lot of respiratory infections because just the environment was not healthy. And they thought that you had to push the air out to get the germs out. It was like this theory of removing germs from the lungs. And it created this ideology almost around breathing that is like, we have to use our breath to remove germs, but it's not accurate at all. It's not based on anything in science. And it actually created probably some nervous system dysregulation that happens through generations. Somebody in your family who has a dysregulated nervous system, dysregulated breathing techniques, you will likely pick up on that because we match and mirror the people around us. So that can like create dysfunctional breathing patterns through generations of people. Taking a step back, we look at this oxygen advantage system and we look at some of the breathers that are famous in the last thousands of years. And we look at what yogic breathing is and how certain individuals who have reached enlightenment have spent certain amounts of time potentially reducing their breathing, either by using those techniques specifically or just spending time in nature co-regulating to reach these states where their breath is attuned to nature and it's attuned to breathing with nature. And this connects to what's called resonance frequency breathing, which is where the earth is vibrating at its own frequency. And when we can match that frequency, our heart starts to oscillate at a certain frequency. And that frequency creates brainwave states and allows us to enter certain nervous system states to reach that autonomic breath. So these yogis, these yogis and philosophers and all these famous people like the Buddha were likely practicing techniques that were similar to what oxygen advantage is. So comparing this system to something else, it's almost like there is no other system, because we're just talking about the fundamentals and the principles behind the biochemistry of breath. So if we do look at, say, another system.
For example, let's go with
Yeah.
Wim Hof, something that's extremely popular these days, something that is heavy in mouth breathing and off-putting a lot of carbon dioxide.
So there's two things I want to sort of compare it to, because I know in a lot of kriyas in yoga, there is forms of hyperventilation, but there is also forms of reduced breathing. So it's sort of like there's a balance. Within a lot of yoga, there is a balance. And it's understanding that you can sometimes shut off parts of your brain, vasoconstriction, as in reducing carbon dioxide. You can shut off parts of your brain that can allow you to push through certain emotional states or move through trauma in a way. And we know this is true. However, if we look at a system itself that is only pushing one side of the blood pH chemistry, then we understand that we're not balanced. So there is really only one system that you can, and it's Wim Hof, that you can kind of compare it to, because it is, in a way, understanding blood pH chemistry. It's cutting off certain amounts of oxygen to the brain. And like I said, this can have an effect on how you can process trauma. However, if you do not understand how to balance your blood on the everyday, in your everyday life, then you can potentially exacerbate or create dysfunctional breathing patterns that are going to be integrated into your nervous system. So a lot of people who do get through these massive trauma breaks, when they're doing holotropic breathwork for hours, they can break through and have amazing experiences. However, how do you integrate that experience? How do you pull it down into your spine, down into your chakras, down and ground yourself into this earth and manifest that change into reality, into your everyday life? You need to understand that your blood needs to be balanced in order to do that. It's through a balanced blood pH that so many important chemical reactions happen in our body when it comes to our hormones, when it comes to when it comes to our gut, when it comes to our brain function, everything. All of our organs function better in a balanced blood pH. So there are a lot of people who, say, hyperventilate for 2 hours, and then their nervous system's jittery. They can't like calm down. They can't relax. And then say something happens and their nervous system can't react properly because it's not, their heart rate variability is not variable. It's more consistent. They don't have time to respond, so they are reacting to a lot of things. Uh, so there are ways to move energy through breath. There are ways to cultivate carbon dioxide. Most people do not have a very high Bolt score. And a Bolt score is a baseline measure of the amount of carbon dioxide in your blood. It's a baseline test for functional breathing. So if you have a low Bolt score and you go and do hyperventilation and it lowers your Bolt score even more, then you've dysregulated your nervous system. However, if you go and do 2 hours of holotropic breathing and then you go and do, I don't know, 30 minutes of exhaled breath holds and you balance your nervous system, then you can integrate those moments. You can integrate the healing that you have done. So I think that comparing it to other systems is sort of difficult because it's in a way we just have to talk about the science. We just have to talk about the facts. We have to talk about what it means when you're doing those exercises. I'm not like a lot of people love to bash. I think what Wim Hof has done in terms of the cold practice, in terms of bringing mindfulness to breath, has been very, very important. However, I think personally, I am not going to practice some of those techniques because my idea of what my baseline Bolt score should be is way higher than I would recommend even for people doing the Wim Hof. I want my Bolt score to be 40 or actually 60 plus, 60 seconds if I'm going to practice holotropic breath work, because then I think real, true healing can be done. And even to take that a step kind of back further, this type of work is healing in its own way. It's not necessarily shutting off the brain, it's actually opening things up even more. And if you can face that discomfort and those emotions straight on, it can be even more powerful. Not even more powerful, but just as powerful. You don't want to like put anything down here. That's like
Right.
what I
So appreciating that
yeah.
perspective coming from you. We're not trying to put any one system down. In fact, we should look at them all in a balanced way because they all fit within the larger framework of what we're looking at. There was a paper that I just recently read where they're looking into reduced levels of carbon dioxide and seeing that that is lending itself to a state of a psychedelic-esque kind of state, an altered state of consciousness, which is where holotropic breathwork and the work of Stan Groff all comes into play.
Yeah.
He created that method when psychedelics became illegal in the 70s,
Mm.
and he is one of the greatest psychedelic researchers of all time, and really focused his attention on LSD. But when it became illegal, he switched over. Him and his wife created holotropic breathwork. But as you were saying, it doesn't take into account the everyday basic needs of the nervous system, which is we need to be able to regulate ourselves. We want as much blood to flow to our brain, to our muscles, tissues, and organs as possible. And that's the side that Oxygen Advantage and Buteyko offer, is like that stabilizing aspect of the breath that's going to carry us for the other amount of time, that we're not in those altered states. The altered states are great. Those powerful moments of healing are so valuable. But if we can't bring those down and ground them in everyday experience, then they're basically worthless. And one of the best ways to do that is through the breath. So the next place I want to go with this is how you specifically see the mechanics of breathing, and how, if you had a client in front of you who you wanted to guide through some breathing and really wanted them to really feel it, what are some of your favorite cues to use to help people feel that experience?
That's a great question. And I keep finding new ones, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So there's some that Oxygen Advantage teaches, and that's the LSD breathing. Funny that we're talking about LSD as well.
Yeah.
It's a different LSD. This is an acronym, and it stands for light, slow, and deep. And these characteristics of the breath should be how we're breathing all the time. So the first one is light, and it's all about the sound of the breath and the softness of the breath. So if we're breathing hard, as in like if our nasal passages are closed in any capacity, if they're anything less than 85% on either side, that's putting strain on your heart, putting strain on your nervous system to try and get the air inside your body, inside your lungs. So by reducing the turbulence in your nose, you're reducing inflammation, you're allowing for more nitric oxide to build, for the air to become humidified, and for like a few other things. Like the light is the first one, and then slow. So slow is all about the speed of the breath, and we really want the breath to be in control almost the whole time. But I also mentioned a quality of the breath which is tensegral. So if we think about the breath, and we think about our diaphragm, and we think about how we expand, when we expand, we don't want to just expand in the belly. We want lateral and posterior rib expansion. So in order to get that, in order to have that possible, one, we need like a certain structure available to us. We need posture. So I always work with my clients to make sure they don't have rib flare, to make sure their pelvis is in the right position, and to make sure their pelvis is actually able to move as they breathe. Because when the pelvis tilts forward a little bit, the belly can actually open up and expand in a way in the bottom part of our belly, in the dantian, the area below our navel. And when it expands there first, it expands out towards our sides and towards our back pockets, towards our kidneys, which are right below our rib cage on the backside. And when we can expand out there, we can fill up fully, and the breath feels like it's filling up through a balloon. And it feels like it's full all the way around, as opposed to like letting it kind of drop, letting it fill up too quickly or getting rid of it too quickly. So this like second speed is all about that. It's all about that control and maintaining like awareness around how you expand. And then that ties into the other one, which is deep, LSD, deep as in two sub dimensions for deep as in back in the face. So if we're breathing in the front part of our nose here, then we're not breathing deep. Usually if somebody's breathing in the front part of their nose, especially if they're breathing hard, their nose will actually collapse and not allow more air to come in. So if you breathe in the front of the nose, and I'll even demonstrate, if you go, my nose is collapsing. That means I'm trying to get more air in, but my nervous system and my body's almost working in reverse to try and breathe. So it's really a flaring of the nose. It's an opening of the nasal passages and the sinuses and allowing the air to hit the back of the throat. And if you can even, there's one of the, I forget the exact name of it, but there's what's called bandhas in yoga, and there's a few of them. And there's one in the back of the throat. And if you can open up the throat and open up the muscles and use your muscles to open up the back of the throat, it's almost like if you were to create space in the back of your throat, like almost that tongue shape, then put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and suction your palate down. You're going to open up all that area, all that space in the back of your throat, and that is going to allow you to take a deeper breath. And once you feel the air hit the back, it's going to expand low. The second you do that, you're going to feel it expand right in the pelvic floor, right in the pelvic bowl. And that's when you can get that 360-degree breath. But yeah, like I mentioned, you want a little bit of an anterior tilt when you inhale. And then when you exhale, it's very subtle, and it happens through intention through the breath, as opposed to like shifting your body through intention. So it's intention through the breath, as opposed to just like moving your body. So you get a slight tuck actually when you exhale. Your tummy comes in, your belly button comes a little bit towards your spine, your ribs are still in. So these are some of the cues that I've been using lately. And there's so many nuances, so many cues when it comes to the breath. This is just guiding what we should be breathing every day. And then there's guiding the actual exercises themselves and all the nuances and cues that go with the breath holds, that go with air hunger. There's so many ways that I've brought myself into air hunger, and I like to share those when I teach.
Yeah, let's definitely dive into that because I think it's a major part of the practice, and it's one of the most challenging and difficult parts of the practice is orienting yourself around those psychological experiences when you have increased levels of carbon dioxide in your body and you are trying to max breath hold and you're trying to hit a time. How do you how do you how do you handle those sensations? How do you handle the thoughts,
Mm,
the contractions? What is your method for keeping yourself as relaxed as possible while those things are happening?
that's a great question. So, in Oxygen Advantage, one of the most powerful ways to strengthen the diaphragm is the exhale max breath hold. And this exercise starts off with a passive inhale and a passive exhale. So it's not taking a deeper breath in and it's not pushing out any air either. It's just a passive inhale, passive exhale. And you hold your nose and you let yourself feel the tension. And there's 3 stages of the max breath hold. The first stage is your Bolt score, which is the first sign that you get to breathe. Then you have a second sign, and that second sign is usually a more contractive uh, constriction of the diaphragm, and that is not a pleasant experience. However, your ability to relax into that pressure is what is going to allow more adaptations to happen in the nervous system. So that was a great question, and there's a couple different parts to it. Uh, One, I think going through the structure of the body and maintaining proper alignment is what actually helps a lot of the times when you're trying to further your max breath holds. Another thing just about the max breath holds in general is you're training a muscle, or actually it's more like fascia and connective tissue, but in a way you're training like you're training muscles. You have to train them over time and you have to continuously potentially add weight if you want to see changes. So this adding of the weight and this training doesn't happen in one go. It happens over a long period of time, and it's understanding how to recover, how to smooth the connective tissue of the diaphragm through breath, create that tensegral pull that's going to allow a stretch of the diaphragm just by breathing a slightly alkaline breath, or by even using hands-on massage techniques to target areas of tension in the diaphragm. So massaging parts of the rib cage can help you go further in a max breath hold, as well as just the diaphragm itself. Some of the things that I love about the max breath holds is that it's an emotional practice. And this is something that I talk with about all my clients. I believe this is an integral part of how to improve in this aspect. When you're facing a maximum breath hold, you're facing the feelings of suffocation. And those feelings of suffocation can trigger senses of fear. And fear is one of the lowest frequency vibration emotions. And it is stored actually in the kidneys. And that's why this is a cultivation of carbon dioxide and life force energy, is we're working directly with the kidneys and the heart, and they form this sort of connection. This kidney to heart connection is one of balancing love and fear. And once we can get past the sensations of fear, and we're in a max breath hold, and we know we're not going to die, we're okay. We tell ourselves, we can physically tell ourselves beforehand. We can speak those words out loud because that is just as powerful. We can say it in ourselves every time we get one of those contractions is, I'm not going to die. I'm okay. I'm safe in this body. I'm safe in this house. I'm safe on this street. I'm safe in this town, in this city, in this state, in this country, in this universe. I'm safe. If we can tell ourselves that, show ourselves a gentler aspect of ourselves through love, through an openness, that fear sort of dissipates. And once it dissipates, it's just you against yourself. It's you against this, it's just willpower at that point. And it's strength and determination, and it's an opportunity to show yourself that you are powerful in those ways. And when you get to those points and when you've reached those thresholds, there's a lot of amazing things that can happen spiritually, but also biochemically. We know that when we're getting past a certain point, I think it's about 90 seconds of a maximum breath hold, we're triggering the spleen to contract, and that pushes out new red blood cells into circulation, and you get this sort of euphoric feeling within the max breath hold. So once you can hit those points, then you start to understand more about the breath, more about the blood itself and how to balance your blood pH. Yeah.
That was awesome. That was a great explanation of how to sustain an exhaled breath hold. And now I want to shift it towards the feeling after the breath hold, because I think a big part of it for me is like, yes, there are some extremely challenging sensations and thoughts that arise as I'm doing the breath hold, but I know what's coming next. And what's coming next is like one of the most sublime feelings of calmness and equanimity that I have ever experienced. So how about you talk to us a little bit about that?
So the first breath immediately following the breath hold is more important, I'd say, than the actual breath hold itself. It's that initial second, that initial breath that we're taking is what we are training. So if we release our nose after a max breath hold and start hyperventilating, we've completely undone all the work that we just did.
Yeah.
So what we're working to do is slow our breathing down. And when we train our body to slow our breathing down when our metabolic requirement requires us to breathe faster, we're training our nervous system in the proper way. And this is really profound and really important, because once we can train our nervous system to do that, then we become better at recovering, and we can recover faster. When we slow our breathing down immediately following a max breath hold, and even if you want to go and sprint 20 yards and then do this type of breath, just slow your breathing down, intentionally slow your breathing down. One, you're strengthening the diaphragm. You're allowing the elastic recoil of the diaphragm to happen in a tensegral way. You're also sending a signal. You trigger your vagus nerve to send a signal to release a hormone called acetylcholine, and that triggers your heart rate to reduce in rate. So that's what pushes your heart rate back down to your resting heart rate. It's not over breathing until you get back to your normal breath. It's slowing your breath down intentionally. And that's the hardest part, actually. So actually, it's a balance between the max breath hold and that. Those two things are very challenging in their own ways. And it's an effort to reduce your breathing down and recover within 6 breaths. And that's what we teach in OA. And if you can even recover in 1, that means your diaphragm is strengthening and it's getting stronger. So I will do a 90-second to 120-second breath hold, and I will recover in 1 breath. And that is something I've cultivated, and I've strengthened my diaphragm over time, and understanding when the diaphragm is tired and what other breathing techniques to use as well. But yeah.
Beautiful. Let's take a little pause.
Sure. Should I pause the?
No. I just needed a drink. I'm gonna
Okay.
close this. The sun's not in my eyes.
Yeah.
I love your answers, dude. I'm learning it. Of course, I've heard you speak about these things in the past, but your thought process is always developing. So just hearing it multiple times is important. I really value being able to talk to you. I'm gonna
Thank
find a different sitting position.
Sure. I I think me talking about oxygen advantage in breath has become so refined.
Yeah, you've done it so much.
It just keeps getting better and better.
Well, so I'm gonna throw a curveball at you here, brother. All
Please
right,
do. Let's
see if
go.
I can get you up balance. All right. So personally, I'm gonna speak basically from experience, but also empathize with a lot of athletes. Lots of athletes have a goal of number one, putting on muscle mass and weight, and number two, competing at a very high level and possibly needing to breathe in and out through their mouth and not being able to take breaks. Like, not, I'm sorry, coach. Don't sub me out. I'm going to stay in. I don't care if my breathing sucks. Like, I'm going to stay in so I can keep playing. Those two components of like, I'm going to push myself way beyond my limit in terms of being able to maintain proper breathing and also gaining a lot of weight, eating a lot more. Um, these two things I feel like can be somewhat detrimental to the goals of something like your program of increasing a bolt score and fixing some of our pathological breathing patterns. What would you say to someone who's one, putting on weight, muscle mass, and two, competing maybe multiple times a week in a sport where they are forced to breathe through their mouth?
Awesome question. I've thought about this a lot too.
Yeah.
Uh, there are so many nuances to breath. There's so many nuances to like the nervous system and really pushing yourself and pushing your limits. And we are uh, like a species that loves to do that, to push our limits, to really go to a place where we haven't gone before. And to make adaptations in that space is very, very powerful. Uh, in the same way that I described how we compare this system to oxygen advantage and we say that, you know, that's an example of us pushing our limit. We're not usually doing hyperventilation like that. We've never done that in our entire life for any reason. And so that in and of itself is somewhat of a limit. So if we're pushing a limit, we have to come back and understand how we're doing on the daily basis. This is the daily practice that we do. But even more so, like if you're out there competing, I have no problem with mouth breathing in that aspect. If you're on the sideline, that's when you recover. That's when you take the time to do, if you can, do some many small breath holds, do some breath holding techniques, recover your blood pH, get to a place where you're able to go back on the court nasal breathing, where you're not still huffing and puffing when you have to go back out there. So there's always a balance to it. But I think I want to mention that there's also like there's something that you get from, so you asked a two-part question, and that was like people who want to put on weight, people who want to still maintain good breathing techniques. I think there's capacity and room for that too. There's just a paradigm shift that needs to happen. You can put on weight. You can build strength without putting on weight. And I think that's where the paradigm shift needs to happen, because tensegrity and fascial strength doesn't happen by just bulking out 10 pounds. It can if you do it in the right way. That's not going to affect your breathing patterns. There are a lot of nuances to that, and I don't have all the answers to how to build that program yet, but I am working on it. Um, there's ways to incorporate how you recover within the weight room that's going to allow for more blood flow to your tissues. for more muscle gain. If you go and you do a max press, like however many times, 10 times your max weight, and you're huffing and puffing, you just slow your breathing down immediately. You're going to feel the difference. You're going to start sweating too. That's vasodilation. That's opening up all the pathways, the lymph. I think there's like I mentioned, there's like this paradigm shift that I think needs to happen around breath and weight and gaining muscle. You can gain that strength and muscle. Uh, there's a lot of toxicity that gets held in muscle tissues as well as fat tissues. And this is part of like a little bit, I actually was going to mention this earlier, but I'm glad I'm kind of like, it segues into it nicely. When our nervous system isn't balanced, it's either in respiratory alkalosis or acidosis, we're in some form of oxidative stress, our kidneys aren't filtering properly, and toxins get stored in those fat and muscle cells. And so that is stagnation of the breath, that's stagnation of the lymphatic system. That's what's going to cause issues down the road. And this ties back into the kind of the sports performance. If somebody is going to go down that route of pushing their limits, and if they can't find a balance with pushing their limits, they're going to end up sacrificing parts of their life force to gain that victory. And that is okay. That's part of life. That's something beautiful in and of itself. There's famous athletes that have too many concussions. They get dementia. They get lack of coordination, focus, and control of their nervous system. There's athletes that have ruined their knees, their ankles. And this is because they push beyond their limits. And that's just part of who they are. That's part of, yeah, like I said, kind of life itself. Most of the people that are on this planet aren't looking to push those limits. They're just sort of looking to find balance in life. And it's not to say that you can't push your own limits while also finding balance. And I think that's one of the paradigms that also kind of needs to shift is it depends. There's so many different factors when it comes into answering this question, but I think I think a lot of people just want to have fun doing whatever they're doing, and if they can't have fun because they're in respiratory stress that's affecting their life, then this is a great way to bring them out of that. And then I do think that this stuff can apply to high-level athletes, high-level sports performance, high-level weightlifting. There's something about the functional breathing pillar that's so essential for being able to perform at these high levels. Your nasal passage, like I mentioned, is way back in here. If you're not able to access that part of your throat and those muscles, you're not getting enough stability and force to be able to do whatever and perform whatever you need. You can nasal breathe in a way that's allowing you to exert more force. Some people say, like in boxing, you go, tss, tss. You have to like exhale to like get more energy or more oomph in your punch. You can do that through your nose if you have that capacity back there. It turns into more of a snarl or a gnarl, or like sort of like how animals make noises when they're like biting into something. They're not mouth breathing. They're like tearing something away. They're like chomping into something. They're snarling. They're like using that back of their throat to gain extra effort and emphasis into whatever they're doing. So I think there's like, that's just one example, but I think there's more nuances to it.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt that any athlete would benefit tremendously from meeting you and going through a course with you, because it's the athletes that are pushing themselves and their nervous system beyond limits that most of them can really tolerate, and they need the ability to be able to recover from those massively strenuous outputs that they do, like when they play a game. My thinking and orientation towards sports and performance has changed a lot over the years, but I was someone who put it all out there and risked everything to be able to play and perform. For example, my senior year of high school, my team was undefeated, going inevitably going to the state championship game, and I ended up tearing my meniscus for the second time. 6 months earlier, I had torn it and it had been repaired, and I spent all 6 months getting ready for the season. I played the whole season. The last game of the regular season, it tore again, and I had to get surgery on it. And I was thinking, fuck, if I've got to go through another 6 months of recovery and I miss the end of the season, like, I don't know if I could actually live with myself if that happens. So I went and pleaded with the doctor. I was like, please remove my meniscus so that I can get back and play in 2 weeks. If they repair it, it's a 6 month recovery. If they remove it, it's 2 weeks. So I was pleading with this guy, not even understanding the implications, telling him, please remove my meniscus. So he removes my meniscus, and I come back 2 weeks later after having my second knee surgery, and I caught a touchdown in the Whitfield championship game. We played great. We beat Central Catholic. We go on. We win the state championship game against St. Joe's Prep, one of the best teams in the country. But what I didn't know at that time was now you don't have half of the connective tissue in your left knee. And like, you got to start living with that. But I will say this to anyone who has gone through that, like concussions, or I don't know about concussions necessarily, but I can say from my experience with knee trauma that a combination of breathwork and movement can do some unbelievable things. Like, the body is just so resilient and amazing the way that it's able to bounce back. And literally, from going through the past year and a half, exploring different methods, and definitely the work that we did together, I have literally been able to regrow that connective tissue that was removed whenever it was torn. So, I mean,
Wow.
it's fucking like,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's, I would say the breath work was one of the major factors for that being the case, because I was able to get more blood flow, more
Yeah.
oxygen into that area. And the medial meniscus is one of those things where the superficial outer layer has vascularity. You can get blood into there, but the deeper it goes, there's less and less blood flow. There's actually no blood flow at all in the deepest layer, and it all happens through like, it gets diffused down over time.
Yeah.
So the better I was able to oxygenate and open the blood vessels, the better and better my knee felt. And so, dude, I would say it's pretty amazing, like, how powerful these practices can be for someone who is an athlete, not only for recovery, but if you're trying to recover from a significant catastrophic injury, all of this stuff is going to help you a ton. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, the breath is so intuitively powerful in this way because the blood will go where your body needs it most. And it'll show you where you're weakest as well. So the blood flow goes obviously to your brain. Like, you get a very huge brain boost when you do things like max breath holds. And you also get an increase in nitric oxide when you're nasal breathing, when you have that functional pillar down pat. When you have that down pat, those gases, they signal certain things to happen. Nitric oxide signals carbon dioxide to leave the cell and oxygen to enter the cell. Sometimes it gets stuck. Sometimes it doesn't have oxygen coming in and out. And so, like, you need a certain baseline storage of nitric oxide in your body. And there's a few different ways to cultivate that. And that's through producing it in the paranasal cavity. You can hum, you can do mostly nasal breathing. And it's actually mouth breathing that reduces your storage of nitric oxide because you're dehydrating your body, all these other things. And then like I mentioned, oxygen, it goes where it needs to. It's going to go where it needs to first. It and where we need it like the most. If you're using breath holds with movement, it's definitely going to go where it needs to. I actually have it. When I was doing my 6 month program, I was doing a jujitsu over the summer, and I hurt my knee. I don't have no idea what happened to it. Somebody kind of landed on it, and it popped in a weird way. Felt funky for like 2 weeks. It wasn't good, and I was doing like running holds at that time, not sprinting yet, but like I think jogging. And jogging holds, I fixed my knee in like 3 weeks. It was fine after that. It was a lot of the times, and I've seen this. There's a guy on Instagram. His name is like Tommy Johnny, um, or Tommy Hill, something like that. Anyway, he talks about injuries a lot. He's like, if you've injured yourself, you need to move. That's like one of the biggest things you need to do. And breathing correctly with that movement is what it's going to allow it to heal the most. If you're injured, you need to move. He says, here's a t-shirt. It says, if you're injured, you need to move. If you're old, you need to like move the most or something. But it's all about movement. It's like continuously, don't allow yourself to be stagnant. And the breath can take you into that place as well. There's in Buteyko, they actually talk about how when you get to a certain level of baseline CO2, your body's just going to want to start to just run. It's just, you're going to like walk outside and just like immediately want to start just running. So you feel that internal pressure to need to move your body, and it's express yourself through that. Yeah, super powerful. Thanks for sharing.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go back to the sports performance. You talked a little bit about what that entails in terms of your program and Oxygen Advantage. I think that's a great tip of like any chance that you get, maybe it's a whistle blown, a timeout, you get subbed out, use that opportunity to focus on your breath. Make sure that you can be nasal breathing during that time. Go into something like cadence breathing, breathe 4 and 6 out, or do some many small breath holds. But let's talk about getting back in that game, okay? And sports are so complex because when I was training with you, I got my bolt score up like into the 50s, and I had it there pretty consistently for a little bit. And I thought, man, I'm going to go into playing basketball and I'm just going to kick these dudes out. I'm not going to be tired at all. Turns out, dude, I was dying playing basketball because I hadn't really been playing. I hadn't been at that aerobic capacity for a long time, but I had been training a lot of breath holds. This dude that I'm playing against, his bolt score is probably like 10 to 20, I've probably got 30 seconds higher in terms of bolt score on this guy. He's kicking my ass and he's doing fine. He's not even thinking about his breathing. He's kicking my ass. And I was like, man, what the fuck is going on? Like, there's got to be some sort of balance between training that anaerobic and the aerobic capacity in terms of sports performance. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that balance and how to like optimize that.
Yeah. So my programs always involve a progression. Uh, and there's certain markers that we use to move on to the next stage. The bolt score, the max breath hold, uh, certain things about the heart rate. We look at those things, and then we can gauge what exercises to move on to. So there's a saying that I like to use and it's, if you're not breathing well at rest, then you're not going to be breathing well during movement. So once you are breathing well at rest, then you can start to breathe well during movement. And that's when you can start to train both the anaerobic and aerobic. You can train both aspects of that. And I think there's there's so much nuance to writing a program for somebody. Sometimes I've worked with somebody who had a heart attack about 2.5 years ago, and they couldn't breathe cadence breathing. So we had to start on a very, very low part where we were breathing 3 in, 3 out for a week, for an hour straight a day, and moving up slowly, 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 slowly. I started with her in, I think, like September. And last time we worked together, I recently went on vacation, but last time we worked together, she was able to hold her breath for about a minute on an exhale. So there's always a progression. And there's always a progression, especially in terms of uh, creating that anaerobic capacity. So if you want to go and build that, you can build it and do strength too. I know for a fact Brian has actually worked with Fred Warner before, and he was having him do exhaled breath hold sprints with the parachute on his back. Like, you can, in my opinion, one of the best ways to build strength is actually by sprinting. When it comes to sprinting properly and organizing gait mechanics and cycle, you can optimize both the breath and gain strength and fluidity in your body in one go. There's towards the end of the program, if you get that far, and even if you don't get that far within 6 months and you still want to continue to progress afterwards, there's options that I have available for you to work with me and still gain access to that information. Hypercapnic breath hold sprints are one of the best things you can do as a human being. It's boosting CO2 to a massive amount. It's strengthening the diaphragm very, very intensely, which is why you have to work up to it. And it's improving that anaerobic threshold, as well as anabolic threshold. So yeah, there's room for a progression always.
Yeah. I think it's good to come in with a certain set of expectations. Like, just because I'm doing breath holds sitting down or even walking, maybe even sprinting, does not necessarily mean that it's going to make me this tremendous athlete. Like, we need to realize that there's different contexts, and within, if you want to be a great basketball player, the most important thing for you to do is to practice the sport of basketball. Like, literally, that's the most important. Now, there's all these other things, like what you teach and what you provide in your course, that are going to be super helpful in terms of recovery, in terms of actually being able to stay focused and calm within the stress of the game. All of that is going to elevate your game to another level. But it's like, if I actually want to get good at this sport, I need to practice this sport.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on was the fascial driven athlete versus more of the muscular driven athlete, because I'm coming to a place now where I see the benefits of both, and like combining those two things together as being the ideal. Because if you're at 100, say you're at 170 pounds and you're playing basketball, you may be very fashionally driven. You may be extremely quick. Your shot may be perfect, all of that. But if you come against someone who's 205 pounds of like 35 pounds plus muscle than you do, they're going to physically dominate you in terms of rebounding. You're not going to be able to drive. If you try to drive past them, you're going to run into a brick wall. So you need that, like that weight, that muscle really helps in terms of like getting in there with the body and like being able to move people around, and just also feeling that confidence of that power behind your step.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the weight room, whenever you're weight lifting, I think what separates some people, I go to a gym, there's probably 200 people in there, big ass fucking gym.
Yeah.
The best weightlifters in there and the most attractive people are also the best breathers. You can just pick up on that. And it's funny because there's posters all over the gym that say like, breathe heavy to get to where you want to go. Like, let's breathe so hard. I'm like, no, this is fucking stupid, dude. Like, let's take that down, because it doesn't actually make sense if we like the physiology. So I don't know. Would you say that your program? I don't know if I actually have a question, and I just wanted to
Yeah,
see
do you
how.
want to? Yeah, I'm down to talk about it. So there's right now in the sports performance world, in the when it comes to building strength, there's obviously certain ways to do it. There's certain ways to fix underlying baseline patterns. There's like there's so many camps that are doing so many different things that are going to help so many different things. Whatever. There's when we get back to like the fundamentals and the principles and how to build strength.
Hmm.
How do you build true strength? Eccentric, isometric 90-degree contractions through a proper stack, and then add progressive overload. That's literally it. Nothing else. You don't need anything else except so you can do that
Oh.
and then incorporate gait mechanics through internal cues. So understanding not just like pelvis and rib cage connection, but more like diaphragm psoas glute connection. So pelvis and rib cage, like that's our musculoskeletal system in our structure. Yes, we can align those by moving ourselves into that position, but how do we create that fascial connection, that engagement during dumbbell press overhead press? We engage those muscles. We activate those muscles through systems like RPR, where we're creating connection to the fascial tissue. We're like activating our lat and chest, and then we're purposely incorporating the psoas into one side of the hip. If we're doing like not just a unilateral exercise, say we're doing a bilateral exercise, let's incorporate what the body does in that position as we're doing that bilateral exercise when it comes to gait mechanics. So there's a deeper understanding, and I'm just playing around with this right now. And I think there's a way to combine it. And there's a way to combine it for everybody. For sports performance, if you want to look sexy, like if you want to grow an ass, like let's go. There's tons of ways to do it, you know? But I think there's like a combination of all of it, understanding all of it. Yeah, I'm okay with like there's going to be a trade-off at some point. If you want to be the most if you want to have the best gait cycle and you want to be um
Biomechanically sound.
biomechanically sound, yeah. If you want to do that, then you have to go into one direction. But if you want to add 10 pounds of muscle, you might get a little bit of a trade-off just for a little bit. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, if you're not going to be, using that biomechanics and you just want to like gain some, like a little bit of extra muscle, that's what you have to like understand that there's different directions and different purposes for different directions. Uh, which is why like, yeah, I don't like to compare, but there's a lot of camps out there that just like don't talk about this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
where do we go from the foundations? Like, yeah, sure. Now we're sound foundationally. We know about the pelvis and the rib cage connection, and we know about the breathing. How do we progress it into like a very intense space? How do we do the 90-degree isometric progressive overload into the biomechanics? Like, let's figure it out. Let's make the athlete complete. And I think that's where I want to go with a lot of the stuff that I'm looking into. Um,
Absolutely.
I plan on doing. I'm working with somebody right now doing a program, and I just got back from vacation, so I'm like not fully in it yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be doing 4 days a week and doing some of that work, and I'm going to try and
You
put up.
hired someone to work with you.
Yeah, he's just giving me the program that he has. He's not. I'm not hiring him, but I'm working with him. A buddy
Right.
of mine. Yeah.
Straight training. Straight
Yep.
training program.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
he was my original trainer. Uh, like
Oh yeah.
back when I got sick, like 2 years later after I started moving again, I
Wow. Full circle, eh?
trained with him, and I met up with him when I was on vacation, and he showed me some stuff already, and I'm like, I've done it like 3 times since he showed me, and I'm like, this is freaking nuts. I'm getting like so I have when we think about uh fascia and the outer layer of fascia, the musculoskeletal fascia that connects into our muscles and our bones and our connective tissue tendons. We want to be able to slide and glide and move freely and gain strength, right? So it's like through these contractions, I've been working to like how do we fix injuries, right? We need to warm and send blood flow to those areas. And then we need to perform the full function of that specific tendon or muscle and like let it slide and glide with counteractive force, with weights added, with some resistance. It can be a resistance band, it can be weights. And then through that full contraction, we get like these fascial like pops. And that's the release of the stagnant tissue. That's the release of the carbon dioxide or the oxygen, either one. If it's oxidated stress from that tissue, or if it just needs hasn't been oxidized or
Right.
has been oxygenated, it needs that oxygen, it needs that blood flow, needs nitric oxide to send signals to
Well,
the tissue, then it's going to pop and it's going to open up. And that's what's like that's that true healing is like working in that fascia.
let's bring in the neurodevelopmental sequence then.
Cool.
I think that slide and glide is what it's really all about. Like you get back down on the ground and you go through all of these different positions and postures where you're rocking or you're sliding and gliding and you're taking that joint through a full range of motion over and over again. You're creating tremendous compression at different angles from different perspectives. And then you're releasing that, you're allowing the blood to come in and flow, and you're doing that over and over and over again. By doing that, not even training gait specifically, but by just doing that, your gait is going to improve tremendously because you're teaching your joints, ligaments, tissues how to glide and slide with each other correctly. And it will translate. Especially those kinds of movements will 100% translate. Now, going back to trying to combine a strength training program with actually becoming athletic, I think that a lot of people put the cart before the horse.
Hmm.
They work on building a lot of muscle and strength before they really hone in on their gait mechanics. I would say if you wanted to put on a bunch of muscle, the first thing that you need to master and really hone in on is those gait mechanics. Like you need superb, perfect gait mechanics. Then you can go into the weight room and start to put on some muscle mass. And you need to continue to maintain your sprint mechanics. You need to keep
Yep.
sprinting, keep recording, make sure that you stay like you make sure that you're not compensating in some way because of the weightlifting that you're doing. And inevitably, that weightlifting is going to affect the way that you move. And it may affect it in a negative way. But if you can do both of those things, already having your biomechanic base built strong, then I think that you can put on a lot of muscle, a lot of weight, and still maintain that speed or even get faster with that extra muscle.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that a lot of people would do the opposite, though. They'll try to put on a bunch of muscle and then say, I'm going to go and get better at the sport. I'm going to get better at running. I think that the first thing you need to do is really look at your biomechanics. Well, the first thing you need to do is really look at your foundation and get your midline intact and get your suction up and get your goddamn breathing in check. While you're doing that, you're also working on the way that your joints are articulating and the way that you're able to respond to your environment. And you're watching yourself on video. You're seeing how you're moving. You're feeling how you're moving in the moment, but you're also having that objective lens to see how you're moving. Once you get all those things in a really good spot, That's when you go into the weight room and you start to put on some muscle mass.
Yeah, I think I think what you mentioned there, having like a running practice, something you're working towards, whether it's a 40-yard dash, an 80-yard dash, like whatever it is, something that's continuous where you're moving your body fast.
Hmm.
That's like something that like if you don't use it, you lose it. You gotta like
Absolutely.
you have to
Jumping.
that's something that's essential is working towards increasing speed. Because that's what makes you, unkillable or harder to kill, which is
Yeah.
what a lot of men want nowadays, and even women. Um, yeah, I just see a lot more in men. They're like, I want to be unkillable. Okay, can you run 40 yards?
How fast can you run?
Yeah,
No, seriously, dude, you're so spot on about sprinting. Sprinting is one of the greatest fucking things that we can do.
yeah.
Like
I injured
all
my ankle last summer, unfortunately. So I had to stop doing some sprinting, so I've regressed in a little bit of my training, but
yeah.
I've healed it a lot and I'm working with uh, a fascial structural integration guy and he's done some really amazing work on me. And also just like the healing just took a long time. It was a bone bruise. I smacked the
Wow.
inside of my ankle on one of those scooters, those electric scooters. Oh yeah, dude,
Oh, dude, I can
gnarly.
feel that through the. I can feel it right
Yeah.
now.
Like you ever like take those freaking scooters, I forget what they're called, and you spin them around and hit your shins or whatever. This happened on with like a heavy freaking scooter and it right on my ankle bone. And it was like purple for months, dude, like
Oh,
6 to 8 months. And it would like pull on some of the ligaments, and it was just like it was painful to walk. Something took forever to heal. I used like red light therapy and like all this other stuff, like yeah, every tool disposable I used. And now it's like it's getting back to normal. I'm excited for this spring because I'm going to start walking and sprinting soon.
yeah.
I'm already doing like walking holds, and I did a little bit when I was down in Florida, some running stuff. But yeah, yeah.
I've adopted one of my new goals, and it sounds like you and I are sort of on the same trajectory here. Um, I'm also going for an aesthetic look at this point too, which I haven't, but I haven't necessarily been doing that. But
All a byproduct, man.
I mean, it is. No, it truly is, especially the cranial facial work. But like when I'm talking about like really getting very like muscular, which
Mm.
is something that you can only do if you are progressive overload, eccentric, you're getting in the weight room, you're doing the right things, you're eating the right way. Like
Hmm.
again, going back to the eating and trying to maintain a bolt score, it's been tough for me. Like at this point, I know that I'm just trying to maintain a bolt score. I'm not really trying to go up because I'm eating like 500 to 1,000 calories in excess in order to put on more muscle and more weight.
Mm.
And dude, that will make it a lot more difficult to increase bolt score.
It's all
To
about like space, like
right,
yeah, internally, like
right.
in.
That's why I wanted to ask you that question. Because I'm sure if any athlete came into your program and they were in a bulking phase, they would be struggling to increase their bolt score
Hmm.
because of how much they were eating.
That makes sense. I think there's so this is actually really good. I've I've been working on a couple things on the side of how to really design programs that are connected with nature. And I'm working on designing actually a women's program currently that's really focused around the cycles, like the follicular and the
Mm,
luteal phase. And that actually coincides with, the moon cycles, the new moon and the full moon.
right.
And I think there is, just by looking at the women's hormones and how they work, how do you progress somebody who actually shouldn't be doing breath holds for 2 weeks out of the month? Like how do you actually do that?
Right.
So if somebody is in a loading or building phase, you could potentially write a program in a similar way where
Hmm.
you're working more on biomechanics and you're working on light breath holding during the building phase. And then when they're I don't know exactly about it, but I'm sure I could kind of figure it out. Like the bulking of it, if you're cutting down and you're cutting weight, you can do things, you can do other practices, you can do incorporate other parts of the holistic health wheel uh, to like in terms of diet, in terms of food, in terms of things even like enemas and like clearing out your system, and then doing the deeper breath holding. And it's like because when we what I found in my own experience when I did like I did fruitarian for a little while, and I was in on herbs, herbal protocol, and I removed a 4-inch parasite from my body. Saw it pick like crazy. That in and of itself, just those like 3 months out of the, I think it was like 9 or 10 months that I was started my breath program. It was like the eighth, ninth, and 10th month that I was like sort of going into the fruitarian, going into the herbs. I lost 15 pounds. I've kept that off. That was stagnation. That was oxidized toxins in my body that needed to be removed, that were stuck in my gut lining, stuck in that parasite, stuck in different parts of my body. I did tons of healing. So if you approach it in that with that concept in mind, like if we're cleaning out the body and we want to do some deeper work, let's clean it out during that time. Let's do max breath holds. Let's do 10 of them a day. Let's get into like some of the deeper stuff where we're even doing walking, whatever level we're at, and then heal your body, build back up. There's a detox phase and then there's a building phase. What you put in your body afterwards is so important. The types of food, the quality of the food, the density of the food, how you progress into that density, how you progress into that building can work with even the moon cycle. So there's like, this is a really good question. And it's something that I've thought about, but I haven't had the chance or opportunity to work on a program like that. But it would be
Yeah.
cool to develop something that has that in mind. And it's not just on the moon cycle. Like we, in other cultures, they work on the solstices and the equinoxes. They don't do cleansing in the middle of the winter. They don't do it because it's not a great idea. You need to be grounded. You're not grounding your feet outside. You need food for grounding. You need in order for your nervous system to be healthy, to not be like on edge because you're freezing, so you can't get blood flow to your hands because you're eating all fruit in the middle of winter. Like you gotta, there's a time and a place. There's time like there's detoxing and building. And so we're ebbing and flowing with nature. We're ebbing and flowing with the cycles where like we can build and break down. And yeah, it like you can build a program for anybody depending on their goal, you know? And I'm like
Right.
open to doing that. Um I think that's what makes a good holistic health coach is to be able to be adaptive and to work with somebody with where they're at and what their goals are.
I think just hearing you describe your ideas based off of something that you had never you had thought about, but not in that specific context. I like what you were saying. I like your approach. I may even try that myself and see what happens. I'll let you know.
So I
Let
do
you
want
know
to
how.
mention, like during, like doing enemas, I did one recently. My bolt score jumped 8 seconds. I took it the morning, like before, and then I took it after. 8 second difference.
Do you have one that you recommend?
Yes. Um, yeah. Uh, I can send it to you. It's a green coffee.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then depending on your constitution, you can and what your bowels are like, you can do other things too. Uh, right now is actually a really great time. This whole month is a great time to start detoxing in March. So that's when the equinox is, third week. spring equinox. So it's a good time to clear things out and bring in new energy for the summer because you're going to be eating a lot lighter, uh, more fruits and berries, more lighter food. Yeah.
I had a whole list of questions here. I've hardly even like taken from these questions because I ended up just asking things that came up in the moment. And I know we've been on this call for we're coming up to 2 hours, so let's start wrapping it up. I
Sure.
did have other questions going back to the beginning of our conversation, talking about training the diaphragm.
Hmm.
And I was wondering, what is the connection between the diaphragm and the lymphatic system, and how can using exhale breath holds help to clear and create movement in the lymphatic system?
Great question. And this is I dive really deep into this in one of the modules in my course. There's a specific lymphatic node that is actually right around the diaphragm. Forget the name of it exactly, but it's where a lot of lymph and blood flow congregates. It's at your solar plexus, which is where your diaphragm kind of is. Uh, Bringing energy and blood flow to there through strengthening the diaphragms alone will improve lymphatic flow. Boosting CO2 improves lymphatic flow, and it does it by that release of the oxygen molecule from the hemoglobin. When we
Mm.
release and send oxygen to oxidized tissues, we're improving detox pathways, which is the lymphatic system itself. Like the lymphatic system has pathways, has energy channels. You have so many, like your nerves and your blood vessels and your lymph all form these like little like braids and like spirals in your body, and they connect to all the different organs and create this what's called the interstitium, which is all the connective tissue that surrounds all your organs and muscles and tissues, and it surrounds your glands and even your DNA. It goes into all three layers. And so these channels can become blocked, and they become blocked when things happen like our kidneys get overloaded because our body can't process all the toxins from either our environment, our water, our food, our air, whatever it is, our stress levels. I actually want to mention briefly, when you have certain stress levels in the body and in the mind, your thoughts create biological waste, and the vibration of that biological waste is dependent on your emotional level, or like the frequency of your emotion. So if you have stress and angry emotions, you're producing heavier and more biological waste for your body to move. So back to the lymphatic system, when your body's overloaded with those toxins, it is a self-defense mechanism for your body to take those toxins to store them into fat and muscle cells. And that's, and then because they're stored in there, like it's keeping you alive, they're stored in there, they're not getting as much oxygen because they're not, the lymphatic system is your garbage disposal. It's you remove toxins through the four major detox pathways. And so if one of those, the kidneys, urination, isn't doing as much as it can, or your kidneys are being strained in any way, it's going to create that toxic overload that's going to stagnate your lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is urination, defecation, perspiration, respiration. We lose most of our weight actually through respiration. It's like something like 75% of our actual weight. I think it might be even higher, maybe 85. So it's like when we're increasing levels of CO2 in our blood and when we're creating space, we're improving those detox pathways. And when we re-ingest things, the detox pathways create a, like, our nervous system knows how to follow that pathway again. So it knows how to move things in that channel and in that direction. And it's all connected through breath and through the diaphragm, the strength of the diaphragm. The diaphragm, it's connected to the heart, it's connected to the pericardium, it's connected to the mind, it's connected to all the nerves, it's connected to the vagus nerve, it's connected to the parasympathetic nervous system. It's a central node. It's the solar plexus. It's how we operate out of. So if you have tension or hitches in your diaphragm, tensions in your breathing patterns, it's going to create stagnation in your lymph. It's going to create stagnation in your immune system. Your immune system is your lymphatic system. So your ability to process is your lymphatic system. Your ability to let go is your lymphatic system. And that includes your mind. Your lymphatic system your glymphatic system, your brain lymphatic system is an extension of your lymphatic system. And that has its own detox pathways. Your brain creates melatonin, allows for your body to heal and repair tissues. If you're not getting enough melatonin production, that's lymphatic stagnation. If you're not getting enough light exposure, that's lymphatic stagnation. It's all about the lymph. And that's why the blood goes to the brain when we do the exhaled breath holds and we get that euphoric sense. We're clearing out the brain. That's why this type of work, and even introducing just nasal breathing, can improve cognition, focus, memory, just all of those beneficial brain things. Can get rid of brain fog, all of that. Yeah.
That's amazing. I was not expecting quite that comprehensive of an answer, but that was great.
I told you it's becoming more and more refined. It's good.
I a lot of people advertise different lymphatic drainage routines to do. A lot of it is a rubbing and tapping up around the collarbone, the neck, in the skull, the head, the abdomen, under the armpit, the hip creases, behind the knees. But I always thought, why don't we add some exhale breath holds into this?
So I mentioned the lymph nodes are in those braids that go into the different layers of fascia, whatever. Musculoskeletal.
The fascia. Know, the fascia.
The fascia. His fascia.
Oh, his fascia. Okay.
You have your musculoskeletal. You have your skin. Your skin is lymph. Perspiration is lymph. It goes into 3 deeper layers, and each one of those layers has its own process of letting go. So you have your musculoskeletal, your skin. That's the first outer layer. Then you have your organs and your glands. That's what the breath hold really hits and targets. And then you have the DNA. And the DNA is all about energy, frequency, and vibration. It's all about piezoelectricity. It's all about how water holds memory and how you can let go of an emotion and release fascia at a DNA level. And this is how people will randomly become enlightened because they just let go of something or figured out a paradox within something. They just understood a deeper meaning about life, and something triggered in their DNA to produce a series of chemical reactions that created hormonal reactions that allowed their body to become enlightened. And enlightened is the highest vibrational state. When we look at the emotional frequency chart, we see, fear, grief, shame, guilt, all those things. And then we get up to courage and love and compassion and honesty and joy. Enlightenment's all the way up there. That's the highest one. That's what a lot of people are working towards, because that's in those moments I've heard, your cerebral spinal fluid comes up your entire spine. You're salivating like crazy. Your emotions are just extravagant. You're enlightened. Your body becomes, you have no pain because you're letting go of all of it. So 3 layers, fascia. Something that I've been researching for years. I love the conversations around it. I'm taking a mini course right now on it.
On the fascia, you know the fascia.
Oh yeah, fascia. He's fascia.
It's fascia.
From Austin Powers.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm Dutch, you know. I'm Dutch. I'm a little bit weird, you know.
Love
I
it.
always, I've always wondered why he picks on the Dutch so much. He really fucks with the Dutch in that movie.
I love the one that's like they're what does he say? Oh yeah, yeah. It's there are two things I hate in this world. People
Oh
who
yeah,
are tolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch.
that's Austin's dad. Yeah. That whole scene is so weird, man. Goldmember's, he's picking off skin, he's licking it, putting in his thing. He's like,
That's
Austin,
He's-
we're both swingers, you see. I can tell by your tight pants. You're very toy, like a tiger.
Tiger. Toy.
Very toy. And then he's like, "Would you like a pipe and a crepe,
Bong and a,
cigar and a waffle?"
yep.
No, no.
Bong and a blintz.
Oh, there's no pleasing you, is there? Michael Myers is a goat. He's a goat.
Michael. Wait,
Michael Myers.
is it Michael Myers? Oh yeah, Mike. Yeah, Mike Myers. Yeah, yeah.
Mike Myers, bro.
Yeah,
Shrek.
he is. I heard he was coming back with another one. I don't know if he. I thought it was in the
Really?
works. Yeah, who knows?
Blow Ops himself. Michael Myers. Austin Powers should be should be the new symbol of flow ops.
Wait, why do you say that? I'm curious.
Because Michael Myers is a fucking dog, you know. He's always getting the chick. He's always
Yeah.
no, I don't know. He's a he's kind of like the Joker card because he's
Mm.
been in all these different movies. He's able to play all these different
Character.
roles.
Yeah.
Even within Austin Powers, he's fat bastard, he's gold
Yep.
member, he's Doctor Evil, he's Austin, he's everything.
Yeah, he's Shrek. He's great.
Literally. He can do literally every European accent you ask him to do.
Hmm. That's cool.
It's very cool.
I'm curious
Okay.
what you think about movement.
I'm extremely fascinated by MoveMed.
Hmm.
I have recently gotten deeper into it with the help of Hugo and AJ. AJ just came out with that course. I checked out his section on MoveMed. It's pretty small, his section on MoveMed, and honestly, the most help I've gotten was from Hugo.
Hmm.
Hugo's taken me through a lot of it. I also really enjoy listening to Eric talk about it. I've heard him talk about it on a few different podcasts. I haven't actually been in the flow ops, but
Hmm.
and then listening to Nathan himself talk about it, like on the
Yeah.
Art of podcast.
Yeah, I listened to that one. That was pretty profound. He had a lot to say about the limbic center and the nervous system, and hearing
Yeah,
just his vocabulary is just very extensive. It's very
it is.
it's wonderful to like kind of just be in that space and listen to it. Uh, Especially as
The
a
way
reflector, I'm like, I need to like just be next to this guy for like a week and like see if I can pick up on some of this energy and language.
yeah, I mean, everything that I've practiced from it has been extremely potent, extremely helpful.
Hmm.
I obviously, there's so many different things. I don't think that if you only did MoveMed, you would become a great athlete or anything like that. But I think it's a very, very helpful framework to use in order to help all of your other practices and just generally like feeling more comfortable in your environment,
Hmm.
feeling more comfortable with who you are. once you start getting the swallowing and the suction and the vacuuming effect, we could talk about the vacuums. You talked about the bundas. That's when I started to really feel the vacuums in my body. Was when I started practicing like what Hugo was taking me through, and
So yeah, it's interesting. I've like I'm still grandfathered into Phillips's course, so I can join calls anytime I want.
right,
And I've been on and off them for a while now. Uh, I found exactly that. I found that it's it's really cool. It helps a lot of you gain a lot of awareness out of your body. You do get a lot of nervous system release. You even gain like some of it is a like gait mechanics is a byproduct of some of it. Uh,
yeah.
I think there's like you mentioned, there's it doesn't progress into like athletics. There's no like the actual system itself is not doesn't progress into something like weightlifting or into sports performance. There's no like yes, it can aid in those and it can help like baseline foundation stuff, uh, but that's just like that's the system. That's what it is,
Yeah.
and I found that to be true as well. Uh, yeah, I also sometimes I don't know if I'm getting it. Like,
No doubt, no doubt Nathan's a cool guy.
mhm.
Like, and that whole system, very, very cool.
I've found that like a lot of the work that I did in my 6 month program with Oxygen Advantage made some of that stuff not applicable or not necessary. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's just like that could just be me personally because there's like a certain type of people that when they do max breath holds they have to pee and
At least the first one.
yeah, and you get real good control of that lower bundus and that pelvic floor when you have to do that. And that's a force of you not wanting to like pee your pants. So you gain that control pretty quickly, and it's an eccentric contraction that you learn, and you gain like awareness around that pelvic floor. And so, like
Yeah.
a lot of that, you don't necessarily need some of that connection because you've already built a strong foundation just through the biochemical layer, through the blood layer. Uh, and then I also I've I've asked a lot of questions and I haven't gotten full answers in some of those, and maybe it's because I haven't spoken with Nathan directly. Because he is the founder, he probably has some of his own answers. Uh, but I think there's diminishing returns with some of that work. Um, like you
To
can't.
make that the only work that you do, I think I wouldn't recommend it.
Right now, they're doing people in the Discord are doing 3 hour, like they're doing a
Deep pressure
contest,
therapy
yeah.
for 3 hours. I know that's Hugo told me he's doing that. I'm like, why? Why are you
Why?
doing that?
Why are you doing that? Is that really helping your rib cage and pelvis alignment that much? Like, is it worth it to do 3 hours of that? I asked in the
It-
chat, I was like, are you guys getting any diminishing returns with this? Because it feels like you would. It feels like it would just be mute at one point.
I mean, you adapt to that bag and it becomes like not even a big deal like
Yeah.
at some point. Yeah.
Like,
I think if you combined that supine deep pressure therapy work with on and off, you flip over, you get into prone and you do some
so have somebody put the bag on you in prone and do a Superman. Damn, like that would be some crazy work on the back ribs. That's what I'm
that would be
like.
good
Let's
shit.
let's take it next level. That's
Yeah.
I'm about that. Like
Fuck yeah, brother. I like that. I like
yeah.
the way you're thinking right now.
Yeah, dude. Like that's what's gonna get your rib cage to fully like the rib cage to come down and in.
Right. To only do it in supine is like you're limiting yourself. If you went into prone and you had someone put that thing on your
And you
back,
had your arms up like that and your feet up, dude.
that'd
You'd
be
have to,
intense as shit. That'd
yeah,
be
it would.
so
You'd
intense,
have to
man.
do like almost an inhaled breath hold with each one or something.
Wow.
That's another thing I wanted to actually bring up. I don't know if you follow. Hugo. I'm sure you do on his Instagram on one of the movement ones. He was talking about the difference between inhaled holds and exhaled holds, and he was talking about his experience with them and how he described it as something very, very unpleasant, and how he described it as the second you hold your breath on an exhale, you're just waiting for the end of that, and you're
Right.
waiting and waiting and waiting, and that's the whole point of like he. It seems like his nervous system rejected it in a way.
That's why I asked you that question actually, and I wanted to hear your perspective, and also add that little point of like, yes, it's extremely difficult in the moment. There's ways of working with that as you described, and also the experience that's coming to you afterwards, the the absolute calm and equanimity that you experience after that breath hold. And if you can find it within the breath hold, even that much better.
Yeah.
But after your breath hold, like knowing that that is coming, I actually love the shit out of that experience of the breath hold, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. It's it is a beautiful practice, and it can be, and anything can be a beautiful practice if you approach it within that way. So I think that was like I just had an issue with that post. Not that like I can't personally deny anybody's experience.
Right.
I don't think that you should be talking about a negative experience you had about a system or about an exercise within a system and share that as a baseline of what you think that like other people think about it. Because
Right.
he not only shared it about his experience, but he said, "You think this, you think this, you think this." When you're in that, and when you listen to somebody who doesn't, think for themselves or can't, is looking to get into that, they're maybe straying away from doing that work that could be really beneficial to them because they saw something like that. I also just like I would never post something about a negative story like that uh, about myself.
I do. I have so much respect for you. I have so much respect for Hugo,
Hmm.
AJ, Eric. I really have a ton of respect for you guys, like all you guys. And I think that Hugo is he's extremely smart, and he has his own way of viewing how things should go and what is most important to practice. And although I don't always agree with him, I do appreciate his perspective on
Yeah,
things. So
I agree.
I think you and him both are very similar.
Maybe that's why we butt heads.
Maybe that's why you butt heads, because you both are extremely intelligent and you've taken this all to a very to a very far point. You've come up with slightly different conclusions, but I would say in general you both agree on a lot of things.
Hmm.
And you both have had a lot of similar experiences.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you both ended up with flow ops and like both of you in oxygen advantage, it just I think there's a lot more similarities than differences.
Yeah,
But
I've wanted to spend more time with him. I thought he was going to be on the flow ups platform longer, but he went towards the movement side of things, and I didn't feel inclined to go into that direction. Uh,
yeah, I didn't either.
yeah,
I do appreciate hearing about it though
yeah,
from yeah.
yeah, me too. I was just curious what your thoughts on it. I don't think we've talked about it, but yeah,
No,
it's taken over a lot of like flow ups doesn't teach anything else now.
I know.
I haven't been on one of his calls recently, but I'm pretty sure it's just kind of this. He's got a routine now. Every week is sort of like rinse and repeat.
Definitely Eric has on 100% given himself over to movement.
And it's crazy because he's such a good Goda coach.
He's a great coach, just in general, great
Yeah,
coach,
great
dude.
coach in general. And
Yeah.
like the work we were doing with biomechanics, true Goda,
It was
respect him for
helpful,
that.
dude. Extremely.
Wildly good.
It's
I like
very
I
good, dude.
still use that stuff. I still use everything that I've learned. Yeah.
Dude, Eric, no, I was at one time, just about a year ago, I was both in the Primal Movement cert and in Eric's platform. And the night and day. between how we were being coached in Eric's platform versus what was happening in the primal movement was just not even comparable.
Mm.
The system itself, the primal movement system itself, very similar to Goda, very similar to what we were doing in Eric's. There's maybe a lot more exercises. The platform, the videos, everything, it's very involved. But the actual calls when we were getting together and somebody had a problem, there was not like, let's all stop, let's help this one person out. We'll all watch and we'll all learn together by this one person
Mm.
getting. There's none of that happening.
Yeah.
Like people were expressing that it didn't make sense or something didn't feel right for them, and no one would stop to address it. And it blew my mind because I had that contrast of like I was in Eric's platform, and if anybody had anything going on, we would stop and address it immediately, and
And
we would all learn from it,
that
dude.
was so helpful because half of us were coaches and we were going to like potentially see that somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
So dude, like when that's what started to turn me away from the primal movement stuff, and I definitely still have a ton of respect for Eric and everything that he showed me
Yeah, me too.
and the connections. Like I know you because of Eric, so
Yeah.
yeah. Hey man, it's been great talking to you.
Always, dude.
I
Always.
so appreciate this. We should do this again, dude. I mean, because I've still got questions. I
Yeah, damn, we didn't hit them all. So we'll do a part two maybe.
let's do part two.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be awesome. I'm gonna put this on my YouTube. This is great.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. You're such a good interviewer. I love like you giving me the floor and like listening. You're great.
Fuck yeah.
You really are. Um, yeah, man. This was fantastic. It's good to see you too.
Yeah. Always great. I love that you're getting involved and always growing, always learning something new, you know.
Always,
I
yeah.
know that's gonna be you until you fucking die, brother.
So
But
you're over in Pittsburgh, you said?
yeah, I'll be in Penn State, so even closer to you
Okay.
soon. I would love to come visit you, dude.
So I'm traveling. So I'm living in Massachusetts until like July, August, and then I'm moving. And
Where are you moving?
I'm
You
going
going
down.
down?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I haven't found a place yet. My girlfriend just literally left today and she's gonna go down there for like 3 or 4 months beforehand.
Katie?
Yeah, get settled. Yeah. And then
Nice.
we're looking for a place in the interim. Uh, but I'm gonna be taking a trip down the coast. And if you're around, dude, I'd love to come hang out for a day or whatever. And yeah,
Fuck yes.
yeah.
Let's please let's do that. Even if I've got to drive to meet you,
No, I'll
like
come to you because I'll be driving down the coast or whatever. It's good.
Pittsburgh is not necessarily the coast. You'll have to see. You'll have to see.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh's about.
I'll have to look at the. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
If you do want to hit Pittsburgh though, that would, dude. I mean, and even if you needed to sleep a night or two, and like anything, I got you. Like
Dude, yeah.
we got
I'd
space
love to
here.
like I want to when I come down, I want to take my time because I don't want to like I literally when I came back here, we got here in 2 days. Three,
That's
technically three, but it was like yeah, drove up from we were visiting some friends in Vero Beach in Florida, and then we drove up to North Carolina to New York to home, and it was like took me like 3 days to like finally get back to feeling somewhat balanced.
right.
But yeah, when I come down, I want like I definitely want to stop in New York again for a day. I'd love to come see you, hang out. I've got another friend in North Carolina that I'm probably gonna hang out with too, and yeah, take my time going down there.
Good for you, man. Thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah,
I know last time we talked, you were thinking about going down to Florida.
yeah, yeah. It's really, I think it'll be great for me. I'm like wrapping up some things in Boston, creating like one of my clients that I've been seeing here since July of last year. I want to continue to work with her, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it virtually, but I think, she's already okay with it. We're going to do some practice sessions soon, and then work really hard over the next 3 or 4 months to set up us to be able to do that. So that's going to be huge for me to just be able to actually move down and still continue to do what I need to do. And then like I have my platform, but that's not like consistent weekly stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
cool, man. And would you, so this morning I wrote up a little thing that I could record myself talking about,
Sure.
and I can send that to you too if
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to do that for you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Absolutely. Yeah,
Cool.
send it whatever format, like obviously on your phone. You can send it Gmail or whatever. I'll add my own little branding on it, and I'll do the same thing that Dr. Brandon did with you the other day,
Yeah.
the dual post thing.
Right.
I'm gonna post some stuff on my Instagram about like my new products basically. I'm doing a
Sweet.
whole like I have 3 different services now. The 6 month program. It's costs more money, but there's more into it. It's 4 classes every month. We're doing like lots of cool stuff. I've been working with this guy who's really, really talented when it comes to Ableton and binaural beats. And so I've created guided breathwork routines with
Oh, that,
binaural beats in the background, as well as just like if you want just the instrumental, like I have that in there. And it's like I'm not only that, but like I'm actually going to get on a call with him this afternoon. There's this book called like Spooky Frequency PDF like library, and you can go into it and find any ailment and a frequency that will heal that ailment. And so the guy who does the binaural beats, he'll take every single one of those frequencies and put it into Ableton and create a noise out of it. So it's playing all of them at once, and then to create like a song with it. And like it sounds crazy. And then
yeah.
we're working to trigger specific brainwave states. Usually I
I know this guy. I've met him on
Wigs.
your call.
Oh yeah, Wigs.
Wiggs,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Dude, Wiggs is cool as fuck.
Yeah. So he lives like 15 minutes from here right now.
Right.
We got together and did like a couple sessions. But dude, so like I'm gonna make it so it's an ongoing project. So you get access to the whole video library, but then you can pay for like a specific frequency if you're dealing with something. So it's like this PDF is crazy. There's anything for like the ones that I did for like I have a guided basically the gentle practice, 3 breathwork exercises and a bunch of cadence in between. I have it going, it's all sleep apnea. It's stuff for sleep apnea. And then it has theta into delta. And it's just like, dude, I put it on for 5 days in a row. I had crazy dreams every single night. It was wild. So I
Is
got
this
going.
is this what's on your website all the way at the bottom?
Are you on my like
The New Earth Matrix, Holistic Health.
yeah.
If you go all the way down to the bottom, there's a meditation and binaural
Yeah,
beats.
that's it. You got it, dude. You already
I've
got
got to
access.
unlock it. I've got to get that unlocked. I will.
Okay.
Very cool. I gotta go back through and do some of these courses that you've got on here. You've got a bunch of new stuff. I gotta check
Yes.
it out, especially after this conversation. I feel inspired to dive back. Roman, last time I talked to you, you had a big old beard too. Like big old beard.
Yeah.
It was nice, dude. It was super nice.
Yeah, man, I'll probably grow it back again this fall. Maybe not this summer. I might keep it light on the summer, but it's
Yeah. No, it looks good right now too.
yeah, yeah. Okay, you might be able to download this. I don't know. If not, I can send it to you in another way. But just send it via email. You can look at the different beats, do it yourself breath program. And it's just a seated practice in program information, like basically what I sent you on your first month. And then like a bunch of videos to go along with it,
Gotcha.
and everything from the Delta Dreams pack as well.
What's the third option?
So there's Delta Dreams, the DIY, and then the 6 month program.
Gotcha.
And the 6 month program is like super intensive. Like I upped my classes to be 4 times a month with weekly discussions every week too. So tier 2 is the DIY program. I'm gonna have that be like you get access to the weekly calls for like 1 month. You just get a taste of it, and then you can, if you want to join the 6 month program, you can. But yeah.
Yeah. Super cool, man. Good
Yeah.
for you.
So yeah, that's why I'm like putting some stuff together. I'm trying to like get things started. I also
Yeah.
have like a mini course with Katie that's coming out.
No.
Yeah, it's gonna basically package the Delta Dreams package, and then like she's giving like a reading for human design and gene keys, and we recorded like an hour and 17 minutes of us going through this presentation that we built together that's combining breathwork, Ayurveda, a bunch of stuff about human design gene keys, like the year 8, the dragon, wooden dragon, Chinese zodiac year, like a lot of cool stuff.
Shit, man. You've
Yeah.
been busy. You've been
Yeah.
busy.
Trying, dude. Yeah, I'm just like I've been putting a lot of work in, and then now like this month I'm gonna like put it all out and gonna start creating more content and doing all that stuff. So
Sweet, man.
yeah. Well, yeah, we should probably wrap up. We've been on a call for like
For quite a while.
literally
But
since
man,
30,
I will say, and I
30.
think this has always been true, I feel like I feel the resonance from being with you. I feel like much better from where I started to like right now. I feel good, sitting here talking to you. Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing your presence with me.
Absolutely. Thank you as well, man. I really appreciate your friendship, and I love chatting with you, dude. And yeah, we'll have to do this again. We'll have to get some more those second line of questions. We can figure it out, sometime next week or something. But and yeah, and then I'll be in touch over the summer
All right,
too. Definitely
good.
want to meet up and hang out.
Good stuff, man.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll end it for here. Thank you again.
Thank
Much
you.
love, brother. And
Much love to you.